Thank you and welcome to the Community Talk Show. Our topic for today is reopening schools, which way Uganda. On the panel today, I have stakeholders, I have a teacher, I have a student, we have parents. The Community Talk Show airs every Monday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Civic Space TV on YouTube. This talk show is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance, that is CCG, and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for today. My name is Layibi. I'm an advocate, a tax consultant, and a lecturer. My panel today is rich with knowledge. I am very, very glad to have these panelists today. I have 4 people on the panel. I would like to introduce my panelists for today. The first panelist for today is Right Honourable Richard Luganya, Bongowat. He is the District Speaker of Omoro District. Richard, you're welcome to the Community Talk Show.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Madam Jenna, our colleagues in the panel, and our audience. Good morning. I bring you greetings and love from Omoro. Thank you.
Thank you so much, the District Speaker of Omoro. We are so glad to have you on the panel today to discuss with us this issue that is very important and pertinent at the moment. Our second panelist is Honourable Onencan David. He is the Councillor, Bardege Layibi Division in Gulu City. He is also the Secretary, Education and Health in Gulu City. Honourable Onencan David will be joining us in a bit. When he joins us, we'll be able to introduce him and he will join the discussion. Our third panelist is Mr. Ochan Emmanuel, who is a Senior Education Officer at St. John Bosco Minor Seminary in Hoima. Emmanuel, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. Can you confirm that I'm being heard?
I think your network is a bit jumpy, so I can't hear you anymore.
Yes, I was saying that my name is Ochan Emmanuel. I'm a Senior Education Officer at St. John Bosco Minor Seminary in Hoima, and I'm privileged to be part of this panel discussion today and the Community Talk Show. A very good morning to all our listeners and panelists. Thank you.
Okay, Emmanuel, we are happy to have you. Your network is very, 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 very sketchy. I hope you can figure it out so that we are able to benefit from your contribution. We are happy to have you on the Community Talk Show. Our fourth panelist for today is Layibi. She is a 3rd-year student pursuing Bachelor of Laws at Gulu University. She's also the General Secretary of Hope Initiative Club in Gulu University. Diana, you're welcome to the Community Talk Show.
Thank you very much, our moderator and my fellow panelists and listeners out there. I'm so glad to be part of this initiative. I'm a student, a 4th-year law student, not a 3rd-year law student in Gulu University. So, thank you.
Then we are happy to have you. For the rest of the panelists, except the speaker, Richard, the rest we would kindly request that to use your videos because this is a TV recording. So, like I stated earlier, our topic for today is reopening of schools, which way Uganda. Now, to take us back a little, in March 2020, and that was last year, all educational facilities in Uganda due to the coronavirus pandemic. According to UNESCO, this has been so far the longest shutdown of schools in the world. Education Minister Janet Museveni is also the First Lady of the country, defended this policy and said that this decision was intended to protect the estimated 15 million students from the threat posed by COVID-19 pandemic. Now, schools open for blended teaching and staggered learning only to be shut down again still by the government. So since the first lockdown, there are pupils who have never gone back to school. Pupils such as P3 downwards have never gone back to school again. Now, there are critics that argue, however, that while the Delta variant brought a surge in cases in June that prompted the 42-day second lockdown on schools, the number of infections that followed did not justify the continued school closures. We will hear from the panel what they think about that. Now, one stakeholder, that is the General Secretary of Uganda National Teachers Union, Philbert Baguma, when he was speaking to Al Jazeera, he argued that the shutdown has caused more harm than good. We have also seen a report from the National Planning Authority, which states that up to 30% of students are expected not to return to their school desk in January. This is due to teenage pregnancy, early marriage, child labor, among others. So this makes us discuss this very, very important topic today, issues of reopening of schools, which way Uganda. So let me start straight away to bring the panelists into the discussion. I'll start right away from Right Honourable Richard. So Richard, my question to you is, what is the background to the closure of schools from your perspective as a stakeholder? Would like to understand the background to the closure of schools. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Council Agenda, colleagues, the panelists, and audience. The question is a very simple one, a background to why we are experiencing school closure. We are all aware of the pandemic that the world is grappling with, and that is COVID-19 virus. Schools and facilities, especially economies, have been closed at a certain point well over. When we are making references, we have always had a tendency and a safe belief to make democratic references to the United States of America. I and you and colleagues outside there are aware that even in the United States, schools were closed for up to 18 months. So schools closure has not been an issue in Uganda as a nation only, but it has been a worldwide challenge. And it is basically because of the COVID-19 challenge that we are still fighting with. We are moving from stage 1, stage 2. Now we have fear and rumors, and we are praying that we do not experience the drastic effect of stage 3 of the virus, according to what the scientists call mutation of the virus. Now, addressing particularly the perspective of Uganda, you are aware that in the many national addresses, the president, especially on COVID-19, has been appealing to the nation, has been appealing to us that we should embrace vaccination, because that became a condition precedent for the economy to fully open. That includes opening of the schools. We are also aware of the rumors and the fears that have been in the community about the negative effect of the different vaccinations that we have been receiving. Madam Moderator, I am one person who is fully vaccinated. I took all the jabs that was required. I got vaccinated on AstraZeneca. So if there are still those ones outside there who are fearing to die, I was one of you who thought after vaccination, probably something very drastic would happen. And then one person told me one day that everybody well over is getting vaccinated. And if there is death arising from the vaccines, then we expect everybody to die. You do not want to vaccinate. Everybody is dying. You want to remain alive and do what? That was a psychological challenge for me. I did my own research and I have a safe belief that the vaccines are safe. My own research has not been founded on my interactions with doctors, but I did my own facts finding. So particularly for the case of Uganda, our rate of vaccination has been very low, extremely, extremely low. And that informs the decision of the delayed reopening of the schools. I want you to look at it in this perspective. Is it better to have an educated dead citizen, or you would rather have an illiterate but a citizen who is alive? So to me, even if I were the decision maker, I would rather have an illiterate citizen but who is alive than only educate a citizen to die. So sometimes decision makers take a lot of considerations before arriving on the decisions they make, which decisions don't go well with everybody. Some of the decisions are appreciated, and while others are drastically criticized. And as an individual citizen, I also take note of both the sides. I entirely understand why a lot of us and a lot of people outside there are not safe with some decisions, because it feels at a certain point that as government, as a nation, we have allowed the situation to come to the stage where it is now. We were in full control, and then we relented and allowed the situation to get a little bit out of hand. But as I bring it to an end on the response to this question, Madam Moderator, it is true schools have been closed for a long time now, and it is our desire that the schools should reopen for a number of reasons that we all embrace. But it is very, very important that we keep appealing to the communities, the stakeholders, the students who are within the age of vaccination, because vaccination is now open. Everybody from 18 years and above. We also continue to appeal to our teachers to all get vaccinated for safe reopening of schools. It will not be of any benefit for the schools to reopen, and then we send the students back to the communities with infections, with the virus, and before we know, the situation has gone out of hand again. I don't share in the belief that was quoted, that lockdown has done more harm to the communities. No, I don't share in that belief. With due respect, economy everywhere closed because we were all trying to protect from the drastic effect of the virus. I want you to try to create a picture of where United States was not closed, Italy was not closed, United Kingdom was not closed, and then our very Uganda here, with the poor health facilities that we have, was not closed. Where would we be right now? Probably I would not be talking on this platform now. I would probably be one of the drastically affected people. Madam Moderator, panelists, and even the audience, I want to imagine we would not be where we are now. So for me, I believe that even if lockdown has had a very drastic toll on us, it was safer we were locked down than getting extremely exposed to the virus. And as I end, I want this also now to inform us as a nation of the importance of schools, particularly of the importance of teachers. Right now, we are talking about teenage pregnancies. But before lockdown, we had not as a nation appreciated how the schools, how the teachers have worked so hard to keep our little girls and boys safe and protected. So sometimes it becomes a matter of shame when we see salaries being enhanced elsewhere in other ministries, in other key departments of government, but we have continued to ignore teachers. And yet we are now grappling with teenage pregnancies because the very people who used to help us with our girls and boys were nowhere on the background helping us. So as a nation, we need to take very, very positively the critical role that is played by teachers in helping to model our children. Madam Moderator, the response to the question has rather been a little long, but I thought there were some things I needed to say. Thank you so much.
Of a stakeholder. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Right Honourable Richard, for that. Let me bring Emmanuel into the discussion. So Emmanuel, my question to you is, having listened to the Right Honourable, and as well as from the perspective of a teacher, do you think the lockdown and the shutdown of schools was justified?
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes,
kindly confirm
I can hear
that we are. Yeah, your question is whether I think that the lockdown that was initiated as a measure to control the spread of COVID-19 was justifiable. I want to thank my colleague panel, that is Right Honourable. I want to agree with him on a number of things that since the inception of COVID-19 in December 2019 and the subsequent closure of schools in March 2020, we've seen a lot of attempts being made by government to make sure that as a nation we respond to this crisis, we respond to the pandemic. The lockdown as a tool which was being used, and actually which is being used to contain the spread of COVID-19, has got, is a double-edged sword, actually has positive and negative implications. Now, I want to respond to this in the perspective of a teacher. Now, we see a situation whereby the lockdown as a non-pharmaceutical intervention to the management of COVID-19 addresses particular issues, but also we feel as teachers that it was prudent upon government to find that they should initiate mechanisms and ways which would enhance continuity in education. Now, we did not see attempts which were fruitful, though we saw attempts being made like introducing the open distance learning, ICT in education, and provision of study materials which were actually being put in place. But still, it was not inclusive, because for education to be inclusive, that means it should not leave anybody behind. Therefore, we find that some students, especially in the rural areas, were being left behind. But most importantly, the lockdown has a very serious implication on the life of teachers. Now, what do I want to talk about in this instance? We see a situation whereby there has not been any clear response plan to that effect. There has been no serious strategy that was put in place by government to make sure that these teachers actually were earning before the lockdown from schools, especially in private schools, are actually catered for. You and I are aware that it ended at a discussion. The president was promising and saying, okay, fine, we are going to have 22 billion donated to the teachers circle. We shall have 100,000 being given to teachers as a vulnerable group. But I can attest to the fact that personally, I did not receive the money, and many other colleagues who are teachers did not receive the money. Now, this is very demoralizing to the teachers who teach our children, because now, once the hope is gone, because at this particular time, teachers are going through tough financial situations, teachers are actually having psychological challenges. Others have ended up into suicide. Teachers have lost value in society. Now, what happens in situations where government tries to pay attention to other issues, leaving the educational aspect? I do not agree with Richard in the perspective of having an illiterate citizen, but who are living. Now, somebody is going to ask you a question that it defeats logic, because when it came to the perspective of reopen of phased opening of these institutions that were all closed, you'll find that some institutions which could poorly manage the response to COVID-19 were allowed to operate. I do not have a problem personally in using lockdown as a tool to contain COVID-19, but I think I have a problem in keeping schools close to 2 years without a clear lockdown. It's prudent upon us to have, what are we going to do? And now, how are we going to manage those that are affected by the lockdown? So, for the fact that we have lockdown as a non-pharmaceutical intervention in the response to COVID-19, which is actually good, but of course, the implications that come with the lockdown needed to be addressed, and actually has caused a lot of problems in the education. Now, the examples that is giving us, yes, that is okay, but we've also seen countries which have been severely hit, but they've not gone to an aspect of closing schools to 2 years. Now, this is very detrimental to the lives of children, because we are able to note that even 30% of our learners are not able to continue to continue learning even when this opening actually takes place. So to me, that is very, very challenging. And 30,000 teachers may never go back to class. Now, what is the strategy that government is going to use to make sure that we have continuity in education, away from the fact that we are not going to take away COVID-19 any soon? Because now one stage of COVID-19, or one phase of the virus mutating, comes after another. So up to when are we going to keep our schools locked? Up to when are we going to keep our teachers unemployed? Up to when are we going to allow children in urban areas to continue with education as they can afford aspects of ICT, and leave those ones who are in the village actually languishing in ignorance? Up to when are we going to do that? We needed to have a clear lockdown exit plan that is going to strengthen capacity of institutions to actually improve. Now, what is most important is that we were expected that government, as we are going to opening up, is going to review teachers and non-teaching staff's salaries upwards to correct the perennial underpayments, that teachers are able to meet the cost of inflation and the heavy burden of covering 2 years' work in 1 year. Now, all this is not being done, and we expect that if government cared for the lives of teachers, if government cared for the life of children, then there should have been a clear strategy that would actually have us have a better life. Secondly, we expected that a special fund, which should have been put in place ahead of reopening of schools for all government and government-aided institutions, to allow all registered children to return and commence classes without payment. We are aware that many parents were able to lose their jobs, and even teachers also had children, for the fact that they are not working. Therefore, the financial implication is biting. We expect that government is going to put in place some form of fund that is going to help to subsidize the cost of education. So I think that we've not really done enough as a nation. That's why the implications of using lockdown as a tool to contain COVID-19 has been so biting.
Okay, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that. Let me move to Diana. So, Diana, we would like to get your perspective on the shutdown of schools, looking at it from the standpoint of a student. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my dear moderator and my fellow panelists. It would be alarming for me to say that the lockdown of schools have been positive to us students, because have been a victim of this particular circumstance. We have about, as the Minister for Education, the First Lady stated that there are about 15 million students, or 15 million Ugandans who are students. And these 15 million students have been directly affected by this pandemic. So it has been alarming in that it brought in a gap between education among students, in that we have about 30% students who have lost attitude towards schools. Now, a student who have stayed home for about 2 years, especially a P3 child who has never gotten back to school. Now, how would government bring that child's head back to the concentration of classes? Someone said that students need to be jump-started for them to come back to the attitude of classes. Now, this pandemic directly affected students in that there was a bit of low concentration in classes, because for university students resumed back to school. But though they resumed back to school, what about their concentration? Because government came up with an idea of ICT to be implemented while students were in for lockdown. But how inclusive was it? Because this ICT idea did not even reach out to students in rural areas. There are students who didn't even have smartphones. So how was it inclusive to them? So on return of students back to school, especially university students, we came back and we were given like a week or two to read and do exams. Now, online education has not been inclusive. Students didn't concentrate because as classes are on, other students will not attend. They're doing businesses around, but they came back and did the exams. How would their performance be? This is still bounced back to effect of pandemic on students. Not only that, there wasn't, if you have to look at the strategy that government came up with, the strategies were not so much, the strategy were not so much positive on the lives of students, because they had an idea of surveillance system in monitoring COVID-19 in schools. I remember when we were about to do exams, schools threatened students to go back and vaccinate themselves, which was a very good idea, though it was in terms of a threat that if you don't vaccinate, you won't do exams. But there were other students that didn't vaccinate themselves and came back and did the same exams. Now, how did it help? Because when students came back to school and they vaccinated themselves, somehow the spread of COVID was reduced, but still the gap between education out of the lockdown was not really covered up. So we realized that COVID gave in a serious gap, and realizing that gap and fighting it out is going to be very hard for government, because we stayed for over 8 months in lockdown, and there was nothing like inclusive style of education that was brought in. Now, government had an idea of funding schools to expand their infrastructures and all that, because schools stayed for over 2 years. We have schools in villages that their infrastructures are fed off because they use timbers. Now, how will schools come back next year because they have a plan of reopening next year? How would a student come back and sit in classes without infrastructures? Education will still have the same gap, of which government has to look into that. So they even had a strategy of giving out supplementary materials to students during the lockdown, but still these supplementary materials didn't work out because not every student had it. For crying out loud, me, I didn't even get one. I didn't even get not even a book or not even anything. I didn't even watch TV because I had other things that I was doing. I was helping my parents with their businesses. Now, how did it help me fight? Did it help me come back to educational system? So with COVID-19, with COVID and closure of schools, indeed, it has been alarming, because closure of schools directly affects students by giving in gaps. And not only that, many students dropped out of schools. For example, in universities, where you find that when we resumed, so many students were pregnant. There was unwanted pregnancies that came out. Not only that, so many dropped out of school because of such reasons, and others didn't even have money to come back because of their financial problems. Because when we resumed the university didn't even, am I being heard? When we resumed, the university didn't even.
Then I think your network
Can you hear me now?
We are hearing you, Diana.
Thank you. So still on the effects, I was trying to say that there was a lot of drop out by students, because when we resumed, students had financial issues. They didn't have, parents didn't have money out there. And when they came back, they could not access classes because the university had a policy that without payment, you can't access, you won't do examination. So we have so many students that dropped out of school because of that when reopening of universities came out. Not only that, even attitude towards education. Students lost it all because they would even prefer businesses to education, because education, they felt the closure of the school wasted their time, 2 years, and nothing was done. Then also concentration, there was a lot of gap in it. So as a student, we had so many challenges. There is one that said, there's a man that told me that students are in the worst situation rather than before, because they would wish for students, they would have been in schools with step-ups on strategies to fight COVID, other than for them going home and staying and in the protection of, these guys are protecting them against the risk of which they are in a worse situation than ever. So government has a gap. Government has a gap in realizing this problem, because they have failed to come up with a clear strategy to fight this. And students in education sector, it is in the worst chambers, of which really need to bring students back on board, and bringing it is going to be very, very hard for them. So my dear moderator, from a student point of view, this has been the effect of closure, and reopening is going to be very hard for government to do that. Lastly, I want to conclude with the assessment system. When schools reopened, especially for university students, assessment has been a challenge, because we had a problem of students not wishing even to do exams because they could not understand what is being set out. Now, government has to come up with a clear strategy on the styles of assessment of students, because there are a challenge of syllabus coverage by the teachers. Now, if the syllabus is not fully covered by the teachers due to this pandemic, how will students be assessed? How will they be promoted to the next class? Now, if they be promoted automatically without assessment, what will happen? What kind of the next future of Uganda do we want? So I leave this for my fellow panelists to think about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diana. I would like to move back to Richard. So a number of issues came out from the other panelists, and as well, I'll give you time to respond to it. But also, my question is that what is your take on the introduction of online studies during the pandemic by some schools vis-a-vis the schools that are in rural areas?
Thank you, moderator. I have keenly listened to my colleagues on the panel. I noted down a few things that I may respond to. The perspectives I am giving are my perspectives, but also they are backed by information from the relevant authorities. My brother Emmanuel raised very, very critical issues on the non-inclusive interventions, which I would like to marry the same argument with the question that you have put forward, Madam Moderator, on the nature of online studies. It is true, as a government, we have been trying to look forward to keeping the school systems going. And that informed the decision that started as an experiment from a few institutions. Unfortunately, I recognize that these experiments were done in higher institutions of learning. And from higher institutions of learning, the experiments have been rolled out to the communities elsewhere, which has been a big challenge in that there are facilities, there are institutions, and then there are communities that could not benefit from these interventions. Lessons were being conducted on radios, lessons were being conducted on televisions, and for students in the higher institutions, lessons were being conducted either through Zoom, either through Telegraph, or sometimes even Google meetings. Now the challenge becomes for the young boy and the little girl in the rural community. The challenge is that sometimes, and in most cases, by the way, they do not have access to these facilities. They do not have access to televisions. They do not have access to smartphones where they can log on and attend classes. In some cases, even where there are those facilities, we understand the financial implications that came along with COVID-19. There are those students, there are those parents who could not basically afford data to run the online education systems. So I agree with my brother Emmanuel that some of the interventions have been very, 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 very exclusive to some people, to some communities, to students themselves. I share in the same pain with my sister Diana. As a student, she has probably had one of the worst experiences. And what she has been giving us is a first-hand experience of what she has been going through, and we take cognizance of that. And still on my brother's point, Emmanuel, on the non-inclusive interventions that were put forward by government, as an individual, my fear is one. As an individual, my fear is that we have a lot of sectors in the economy. And if government was to come out deliberately to pick on education sector, what explanation would government? This is my view. I probably may not share this view with any other person, but this is my view. What would be a take from the business community, the business sector, the commercial sector? What would be a take and the demand put forward by the other sectors? For me, my whole problem with all this arrangement is one. The arrangement should have been very specific and very direct to private school teachers, because we are aware that government school teachers remained on payroll, much as probably the other benefits that they would be getting in terms of allowances while they were in schools could not be received. But the worst effect now fell directly on teachers under private institutions. So I believe as a nation we could have done better by making deliberate and introducing specific and special schemes that would cater for private school teachers. Emioga came in, arrangements were being made for the private school teachers, which arrangement I don't share in the belief that it is safely tailored to answer the question of inclusiveness of the interventions. So probably as a government, probably as the parliament of Uganda, there is need for our national leaders to have a second thought, especially on private schools, not only for the teachers. I would also want to inform the audience that there are key interventions that have been taken by government and by the different agencies of government. For example, the Bank of Uganda came out openly and said, let there be a waiver on taxes. The government, the Bank of Uganda even advised financial institutions to renegotiate the terms of the loans that were given to private institutions. Now, whether that has been done successfully or not is a question we leave for another day. But it shows that there was goodwill on the part of the key decision makers. National Water and Sewerage Corporation is in the process of negotiating bills with private institutions and hospitality institutions. Why? Because it came to be realized acutely that these institutions were not operating, but on the basic operation, you cannot close an institution fully. So some of these facilities, like electricity bills, like water bills, continued to rise. And both Omeme and both National Water are in negotiations with the institutions and with a commitment that is being pushed on their part by the central government to cut down the bills for the private institutions. And we believe these can be some of the interventions that will allow some breathing space for the private institutions. There are schools that will find it very difficult to reopen, especially private schools. These are schools that have been under loan facilities, these are schools that even had some of their assets mortgaged in the banks. I have a few schools already I've interacted with their proprietors. The banks have taken over parts of their schools. The banks have taken over parts of their assets. And that informs us as a nation that the direction we are heading to is not a very safe one, considering the key role, the key intervention that is played by private institutions, especially in the learning sector. Madam Moderator, I want to respond specifically to one other thing again that has been raised by my brother on the exit strategy. Maybe as a nation, we need to borrow leaf from elsewhere. There has been one general exit strategy that has been shared by every other economy elsewhere, and that is vaccination of the citizens. There are countries who are now going for their third jabs of the vaccines, the different vaccines. So one of the generally shared exit strategy is, please let us encourage ourselves, let us encourage our communities to embrace the vaccination. For me personally, I don't believe there is a nation, there is a government that deliberately or negligently allows all its citizens to die or all their health to be affected. And I still appeal strongly to our communities out there that let us embrace the vaccination. That is one exit strategy. And another exit strategy, I had already noted with concern that all these things that have been happening, I believe they have happened for the good, to open our eyes on the importance of teachers in the economy, in the nation. And I hinted on one area, especially on the teenage pregnancies and early marriages. When you look at the rate during the lockdown, that is a time when teachers were not playing a role in the lives of our children. It informs you of how important teachers are in the nation. And one exit strategy that I strongly recommend to government and even to parliament, I hope there will be sanity anyway one day in parliament. One exit strategy is, let us be very deliberate. Let us be very deliberate in enhancing the salary structures of the teachers to counteract the drastic effects of the pandemic that the teachers have been going through. And also, there is one thing I would like to respond on, especially on the keynotes that have been given to us by campus. On the loss of attitude, there are interventions that are being done by government. One, teachers have been going through trainings. The first session of training, the second, teachers, the head teachers in particular, even now going to a third session of training. These orientation trainings are deliberately targeting the lost learning time because there is a general concern now of the automatic promotion of pupils that were supposed to sit in P1, P2, and P3 classes. So the teachers are being trained on how to respond to this dynamic because we understand pupils have been home for a long time, they will go. My sister put it that we need to jumpstart them. So there are trainings that are being done, given to teachers. There are community dialogues that are being held with the parents and foundation bodies in the different schools to align the attitude of the key stakeholders in education towards reopening and towards learning. Psychosocial supports are also being given to teachers so that, first of all, their own attitude is corrected. And then secondly, they will have an impartation on the pupils, on the students, because the psychosocial support is targeting the well-being of the learners. So I strongly believe that if all these measures are embraced and welcome, and we adjust as decision makers think we should adjust, then we can safely have the schools reopened, we can safely have the education system operational in every stage. I want to recognize the efforts of the Minister for Education in trying to also negotiate, because there are key stakeholders who are saying, why are we opening nursery schools? But then the minister comes out and says, no, nursery schools are foundation schools and we need to open them as well. We pray that Parliament gives it a nod and all institutions are opened. So back to the online class, as I conclude on this, I agree with you. Sadly, I report that I was also a student somewhere in that period, and I have a first-hand experience in all these affairs. Sometimes you desire to sit in the class, and then all of a sudden network comes, and you're off from class. You desire to sit in the class, and you cannot even afford the data, because for some students, to run a day. And now to a family that even fights to get 3,000 shillings, 5,000 shillings, physical cash a day. It only means the online system of education neglected and it excluded majority of the pupils and the students, which is sad. I hope at some point we will realize how much it has affected us. And it is also my prayer that we have strategies to address this. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Richard. That has been quite elaborate. And I would like to move to Emmanuel. So, Emmanuel, we have seen all this intervention by government during the COVID-19 pandemic, starting with the shutdown of schools to introduction of online studies by schools, to the issues of radios and trying to reach the students. My question to you is, do you think government's response was sufficient enough to counter the effects of COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you so much. And also thank you, analysts, and to all our viewers out there. I want to go straight and address the question that you put on table. That do I think that the government response to COVID-19 in the perspective of education was sufficient? Honestly, not. Speaking from the point of an educationist, speaking from the point of a parent who pays school fees, speaking from the point of a student, actually, I don't think that government's response was really sufficient, because in my previous explanations, I was showing you how inclusive this response has not been, how timely some of these responses has not been, and how the implementation of this response in some instances have been very weak. Now, my colleague panelist, Richard, will say there has been the goodwill, but I am trying to measure the level of the goodwill and contrary to the level of commitment to implement whatever we think that's actually supposed to be done to make sure that we move away from the effects that are so adverse on educational institutions as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Honestly speaking, Madam Moderator, we as teachers feel like the government's response to the affairs of educational institutions relating to COVID as actually not been sufficient. In the first place, when it comes to responses, we do not know which stakeholders were consulted, because we have institutions, for example, that deals with private schools. Yeah, we have an institution and the entire structure and leadership of private schools. I do not think that when these decisions were actually consulted, because in the event where these were consulted, then we would foresee some of these challenges that are actually now in place, and we would actually try to see methods and methodologies that would actually try to mitigate some of these challenges. A case in point is that the president was sometimes talking about committing 22 billion to the teacher circle, and you find that the money disappeared all of a sudden, and nobody seems to know about where it went. Government also makes a commitment that, okay, fine, let financial institutions, let banks hold on the loans for private institutions, for schools and stuff like that. But then again, you still on the ground go to find out situations where actually assets of private schools have been frozen, even with such a commitment by government. Now, government says, fine, let's have study materials for children actually who are home. Let's have revision packages for children. But then again, you'll find that even in the channel of distribution of these study materials, some of them are given to specific members of communities, or maybe in a way find themselves to government or the ruling party perhaps, and that leaves a good number of learners unattended to. So the principle of inclusivity in a great level is actually ignored. Now, aspects of phased reorientation in this response was done, because how market vendors down Chikubo, how people in the park, actually travelers, and then whoever works in the park can actually manage aspects of COVID-19 than a fully structured environment like a school setting. So it defeats logic, because the intention is that we are saving 15 million learners who are very vulnerable, but then these learners actually are left in villages wandering in marketplaces, because these marketplaces were open. These learners at the same time were moving about using these transport means. So it actually defeats logic. This entire response by government to COVID-19, yes, it could have done something, but I don't think it has really done much, because a good number of learners are as raw as you can never imagine. The 2 years, they've never touched books. Others have never seen a TV. They've actually never had even a rhyme from class. So what do you expect? You expect a very demoralized group of learners who no longer want to go back to school, because perhaps in a way they could have do some businesses. They could have perhaps tried to find other sources of living. You're trying to look at a situation where teachers were very much demoralized, teachers were not attended to, and teachers are not in the mood to go back to school. So if in any case, these responses were timely, these responses were sufficient, we would not see such a situation. So let's go ahead and look at what is going to happen. What is going to happen around 10th, when schools actually open? You're going to see a situation whereby very many learners are not able to return. This will actually show you clearly that government's response to institutions were not given attention. Even the number of teachers, even schools that will never open again, even schools that have actually been taken away by banks. So you find that that is a very big challenge. Although Richard is going to tell you that yes, the goodwill has been there because his honest thought is that, okay, now how are we going to deal with the question of the economy? How are we going to deal with the question of business if a lot of attention is given to education? Now, we all know that education plays a critical role of development, plays a very serious pivot in the development of any nation. And where education is actually left, we find that endangers the steps that the nation is going to follow. We've seen commitments by government by putting money to the Uganda Development Bank, UDB. We've seen government trying to support small scale and medium enterprises. We've seen some being made, at least, though not to the maximum, but we also wanted that these similar interventions actually, with the energy that is being put, also be addressed to aspects of educational institutions, because we believe that educational institutions are very, very important, and a lot of attention should actually be geared towards having them fully operational, even when the lockdown was in existence, because we know that the lockdown as a tool to respond to COVID-19, it cannot be forever. We are not going to have a lockdown after another lockdown. We shall need to live with the lockdown. We shall need to adopt to the new normal that comes with the challenges that COVID-19 has put in place. So therefore, government should have prepared better to make sure that these challenges that are posed by the lockdown and COVID-19 itself should have been best responded to. The exit strategy that Richard talks about in terms of vaccination. Now, vaccination will not work for all. We have a good number of learners who were kept at home, but still, vaccination would not be their solution, actually. You know, the aspects of salary enhancement, I don't think this is timely enough, because we should have actually thought about salary enhancements even before the advent of COVID-19. Therefore, we actually killed the morale of teachers. This is because even before the lockdown, teachers were already complaining of salaries. And when COVID-19 came, it was another very big issue, you see. So teachers were left for quite a long period of time without being attended to, especially those ones in private schools. So I feel like, yes, as much as salary enhancement is a very good idea, it has not been a timely intervention to the aspects of response to the affairs of COVID-19 and several others. The aspects of psychosocial support, yes, it's going to work, but also we need to have, how is it going to be functional? Who is going to execute this? Because providing psychosocial support to learners, at the same time, teachers who are supposed to provide this support are actually demoralized, actually having problems themselves. Others have ended up committing suicide. It's very challenging. We need to have how this actually works very well, so that we see, a fully operational educational institution. So to me, honestly, this response has not been timely. They have not been sufficient. Actually, it has not lived to the purpose.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Moving on to Diana. So Diana, my question to you is, do you think that government should invest in ICT so that it is to handle such a situation in the future?
Thank you very much, moderator. Such a wonderful question. That do I think government should invest in ICT? Yes, I think government should invest more in ICT if they really need it, that they see it as a solution in fighting the gap in education. Because when we talk about online education that has been brought in by government, it has been like government dreaming. Because I had an experience in it. When we went back for the second lockdown, we had an online education which was going on. And it was indeed, we had so many challenges around it. Number one, there was no concentration by students because the online education wasn't participatory and inclusive to the students. In that students would rather participate and indulge themselves in other activities, not concentrating in classes, because when it comes to online education, teachers lost track of bringing students on board other than sitting in classes, where a teacher will ensure that a particular child is attentive in class and understanding what he's trying to bring out. So such kind of non-inclusive and not participatory ICT or online education has been really in a bad stage. Honourable Luganya might think that it is something quite good because he talked of bringing back attitude, but he talked of attitude that students have lost it all towards education that is going to be brought back by training teachers, bringing in psychosocial support and automatic promotion of students, of which automatic promotion of students is really something very alarming and bad, because government might think their trials into ICT or online education or their trial into providing supplementary materials during lockdown helped students understand, but no. Like I said, students' brains need to be jump-started because they lost it all. There was a period of time where this online education stopped because of financial problems that schools were facing, because for an online education to come back on board, schools were supposed to, a student has to have an account with the school for them to access. And in that account, you have to be able to access notes and other things, of which it became quite expensive to the school. Now, if government wants to invest in this ICT or online education, they have to look at, first of all, students and the school itself, whether they have the capacity. Now, when we are undergoing online education during the second lockdown, of course, schools refused to even reduce the tuition fees because they have been having challenges. They wanted, their financial issues were all there. But then again, with students' issues, there was a gap with buying data and all that, of which various universities didn't help us in doing that. Now, how will, if government wants to continue with ICT, they have to look into a student's perspective, how a child is going to be able, because there is also a network challenge. Well, in this country, where in rural areas, we don't have proper network. Now, how will government invest? Now, investing in this ICT or online education needs a period of time, of which how will that period of time come up? How will it fight the gap in education? That is why sometimes I feel online education is really not good, and government should somehow not waste their money in it, rather than bring students back on board and supervise on the guidelines to fighting COVID, ensuring that students vaccinated and they are preserving their SOPs, because investing in ICT is going to waste money. How? Because it needs a time. First of all, they need to train students on how to use it and how to access it. Besides, who are the experts that are going to enhance this? What will government do about that? Then what about the university or schools? Do they have the capacity to enhance it? Where is the financial source that they will have? So those are the areas that government have to look into it, because if they don't look into it, then how will their investment will still go into
Okay, see, Diana is now. Okay, let me move to Richard. Okay, Richard, my question to you is that how best do you think the government should handle a situation like this in the future?
How do we address this situation in the future?
Yes.
Madam Moderator, preparedness is very important. I believe everybody has learned a lesson from the challenges that we have been going through. As an individual person, I learned a lesson and I had to adjust on a number of things. So one, government needs to invest in our health facilities. It is alarming and it is annoying that when you study the structure of budgets of the different ministries, you will realize that percentage increase on ministerial budgets, the one for Ministry of Health, is alarming. Most of our health services are being provided through assistance, through donation, through handouts. And as a government, we should be ashamed of this. And as we prepare for the future, we need to invest deliberately in the health facilities. We need to invest in even education, because you see, you can never be prepared unless you can receive answers directly from your citizens. You cannot. As a government, we have learned that we have been waiting for most of the answers from outside, from elsewhere. I think we should be asking ourselves why we were not even prepared to supply our country with sanitizers at the onset of the infections. So we need to be very deliberate and strengthen the institutions in the country, particularly the health institutions. Secondly, we have also learned a lesson that it comes to a point where every economy for itself and good for us all. And that means as a country, we need to deliberately invest in the local industries. This business of exportation, this business of allowing a lot of big companies into the country, and at the end of it all, we don't realize the value of their existence in the country. So as a government, we need to think twice. And via education, we need to enhance our connectivity level. Today we are questioning the connectivity, the stay-in-class method, using the online systems. But you see, there are countries, there are nations that have had to embrace internet connectivity long before even this pandemic started. When you look at places like Monaco, just an example, you look at the level of their broadband, you look at the level of the MPBS, the speed of their internet. You wonder why it takes you 10 minutes to log on a website in Uganda, and yet when you're in Monaco, it will take you about 15 seconds. So we need to improve on connectivity deliberately so that in any case, we need to move to a country of ICT. This meeting could have not been possible 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, because I and you did not imagine or did not even embrace that the world could be very small. I would be sitting in Kampala, somebody would be sitting in Gulu, another person would be sitting in the United States, and we would be on one table through Zoom, through Google Meet. So it tells you that as a country, we need to prepare, we need to strengthen the ICT development, the ICT systems, and we need to deliberately train our personnel for purposes of self-reliance. And particularly on education, we need, this is what I propose as an individual, and I hope decision makers will think about it one day. We need a very, very, very special scheme that handles specifically private institutions. A scheme that gives them some financial leverages, some financial benefits, some breathing capacity. Because much as we recognize these are private businesses, but we also need to take cognizance of the fact that they are training our citizens, they are training our children. And neglecting them means neglecting the very citizen that we are trying to train and protect. So government needs to introduce a scheme that strengthens, particularly in terms of finances, the private institutions that we have. So that would be going forward. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Richard. Moving to Diana. Diana, from the perspective of a student, how best do you think the government should prepare for such a situation?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. How best do I think government should prepare for such a situation? When it comes to ICT, as I stated before that it is a broad and very important key aspect. We realize that with ICT, we have students, we have the university or the administration, the institutions within the school, then we have the government itself. Now, government has to first of all look at how easy or easy access would online education be to students. Now, what are the financial stores that students have in accessing it? Besides, are they educated or literate about it? Now, government has to ensure that for them to prepare well, they have to ensure that we have trained, as Honourable stated before, we have trained the students in accessing this online education using gadgets. But besides, do they have the gadgets, first of all? What about the poor students out there in the rural area? Do they have it? If they don't have, what should government do in ensuring that they have and they can access it? Then, not only that, what about the experts? Do they have the knowledge in training the students? What about the institution? Are they prepared enough? What do they have in ensuring it? Because when we talk about online education, when we are having this online education in my university, every student was supposed to have an account, because online education does not only come with a student attending a Zoom class or Discord class, but also it comes with accessing notes online. Because there are supposed to be notes sent in, there are supposed to be discussion groups online. So how will the school prepare for it? Are they financially strong? If they are not, government has to invest in them. Those are the steps or preparations that I think government should look in for online education to be a success, because it does not only look at students attending classes, but also accessing other gadgets to ensure that the education is moving on very well, has a new normal to them when they were before. Because we have, as Honourable stated, that we have so many countries, the US and the other states, that they feel online education has worked for them, it has been working. But now when we look at this, it's also a matter of time that Uganda will adopt and make it smooth for them as other states are doing. So the time that we need, how will it delay our education sector? Government has to strike a balance in that, because we cannot sit at home, wait for government to train me to access online classes, then I be studying. No. What about if I vaccinate myself and go by adhering to SOPs and coming back to classes? Also, government should look at that, so that there shouldn't be a gap in education system. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Diana. Before we invite the... Okay, as I'm moving to Emmanuel, and Emmanuel, my question is, since government plans to reopen schools in January, how best should the teachers prepare for the reopening of schools?
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Your question is, as government moves to reopening of schools, how best should teachers prepare? Thank you. My observation is this: either end should only not be teachers preparing. I think government should come in place and put better mechanisms through which these educational institutions are going to be opened. And also teachers also need to make personal efforts, also with support from educational institutions to make sure that they get ready going forward to prepare to welcome learners from this very, very long holiday. As you put it, teachers should try to reconsider provision of psychosocial support. Now that comes with actually tuning in their minds and preparing their attitude as well to believe that they owe this nation a very big deal. They actually make a very important and a significant contribution to this nation. Therefore, they need to prepare adequately. Well, they need to refreshen their minds and prepare to have these learners actually given psychosocial support. Now, it is not very easy to actually start teaching concepts related to class from a learner who has been in the village and has never seen books for the last two years. It's not so easy. So learners alike and teachers should start preparing in terms of psychosocial support. Two, teachers also need to learn going forward that there is actually need to look for other means to supplement the information that they're going to give to learners, because the educational institutions have had a very big challenge in terms of providing for their own learners when it came to the lockdown. Even when government was called upon to do so and give maybe supplementary learning packages, that was not very possible. So therefore now teachers need to consider using a wide range of materials that would actually be in trying to bring back forward the learners to the learning mood. Also, teachers need to consider using the structures that they have to voice their concerns. I know teachers have undergone a lot of challenges, be it financial, be it psychological and all. So they try to use and organize themselves in structures of leadership that would advocate for their demands, that would advocate for their needs, so that going forward, as they serve this nation, they're also treated better. I also think that teachers should give proposals concerning review of staff salaries, so that we correct the perennial underpayment, because now inflation is really going high each and every day, and most teachers may not be able to meet the cost of these inflationary tendencies, and therefore teachers need to organize themselves in groupings, actually leadership structures that would advocate for a fairer treatment from their employers, and government needs to demand. Yeah, and it is also important that teachers also try to guide parents on their role in trying to shape and trying to build the behavior that is needed, especially after this long holiday. Now, most parents actually think that it's the responsibility of teachers to man the discipline of their learners, and yet this does not work like that. It is a double-edged sword, like I did say before. So parents have a contribution to make so that the lives of these learners become better. Equally, teachers also have a contribution to make. But then it is a role of teachers to make sure that the parents of these children that we're actually handling, to make sure that they make their contribution to improving the life of these children while at school, as we reopening in Paris. So this, among many others, need to build hope, because I know they have been living in a state of hopelessness for quite a long time. But I think this is the time where teachers need to gather the energy, gather the momentum, and once again get back to doing their work, because actually they actually call to serve, and therefore service comes with a price. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panelists. Before I invite the panelists back, let me move to the attendees to be able to give their input into today's discussion on reopening of schools. I will start right away from Ujara Francis Jackson. I can see your hand is up. You have 2 minutes to give your input into today's discussion. So Francis, you have the floor. I can see Francis's name hand is up, but we can maybe have Fred first, since I am not seeing him unmuting. So Fred, you can contribute to the topic. I understand you're a teacher yourself. So we are discussing about the reopening of schools, and you'll be listening to our panelists. So you have the floor to give us your contribution as an attendee.
Thank you very much, Madam Host. I'm very sorry I came in a little bit late because I've been chasing around treatment. Thank you, CCG, for this opportunity to have this, I would call it brainstorming opportunity. I think our panelists seem to be falling on the same side of this conversation, yet differing in the different aspects that they want to look at. For example, I think Honourable Richard Luganya looks at it from the perspective of a local government that seems to appreciate all the little and meager efforts put in by the Ministry of Education. He goes ahead to say thank you to the minister for convincing stakeholders, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, my friend Ochan Emmanuel clarifies that there is a ton of other things that have not been done. For example, when I have to wait for a Twitter post from my minister as a teacher to tell me when I will be getting back to school, that shows the disarray in which our education system has reached. But I am not going to comment much on what each speaker said. However, I'll provide my own perspective. I would say I have been one of the most fortunate teachers in this pandemic because I have been teaching since the beginning of the pandemic and I have not stopped, and I teach in an international school. Most of our discussions are focused on government schools, private schools, but I would say the middle class or the elite people or the MPs, the ministers, all their children have been going to school. None of them is languishing at home. None of them is worried about MiFis and data. No, they do not have this issue. And from my perspective, the reason why international schools have adapted very well, which I think if a serious government wanted its school to reopen and successfully sustain that educational journey, it should ensure four things. Number one, there should be a proper financing of measures to ensure there is no spread of COVID. I am very, very pessimistic about this reopening because the lack of preparation pointed out by Richard and Emma in the area of health, in the area of retooling of the teachers, because we are literally making the teachers become health workers at the front line of fighting COVID, meanwhile, trying to protect the children to ensure that they are safe from COVID. So in the end, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 cases in a school which has like 500 students, and there will be closure. So you'll be seeing closure all over the country. And before we know it, the whole ministry just declares all schools back at home because we do not actually have a strategy for that. Number two, according to a UNICEF report, Uganda has a very weird kind of education system. Emma pointed out that parents don't do their part, but it's sad that schools in Uganda actually are the safe havens for the children to actually grow up in a healthy, free environment. Why? In the last few months that we've been at home for almost a year and two, over 22% increase in child abuse, child neglect, and early pregnancies. That means children are not even safe from their parents, from their uncles, from their communities, and schools are the safe havens where they should be, which it shouldn't be the case. It should be a place where they go to learn, a place where they can grow, a place where they can go and come back into communities, because there are several stakeholders of education, including the child, the community, the parents, and the schools themselves. So in a nutshell, CCG, what I would point out is the fact that we haven't done enough. We still don't know how to educate our children. The teachers try their level best. The teachers get their lesson plans. The teachers try to play parent, try to play doctor, try to play every single stakeholder in education, but it's not enough. And we are bound to fail if we continue that note. How can we change this? A lot of discussions in this forum has been about financing. I choose to say it's not the money that matters, because pouring money into a teacher's circle, increasing teacher's salary, yes, it might create the excitement that, hey, I'm getting more money. Hey, I am more respectable. I'm improving my standard of living. But that's not the case. If you want a proper education system that lasts the test of time, then you need to invest in the proper attitude for education. For example, what are the children learning? We have a bunch of people who don't understand what a disease is. And we have a bunch of adults right now who wouldn't even take vaccines because of the education system. They don't understand how the science translates into helping people be safe from COVID, how the washing of hands, how the sanitizing helps people to be safe from COVID. In my own sub-region, Northern Uganda, Madam Host, when COVID first came, we called it an evil spirit, and people beat jerrycans and saucepans to chase it away. That's the level where we are. A community that doesn't understand its environment is a community that has nowhere to go. So I would like to conclude there so that Francis can come in. I think he's now available, but I think we still need a lot more to be done for us to be able to say like, hey, we can reopen and we can have a strong education system that we can reap the benefits. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred, for that input. Let me now invite another attendee, that is Ojara Francis Jackson, to give us his input. Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Paul Ojara Francis Jackson from Kampala University, Lero campus. And I want to submit my submission on some issues. Since the lockdown began on March 20th, the government tried to put some SOPs to be followed. And much as the government put that SOPs, the government did not plan for the teachers, especially for private teachers. The allocation budget for teachers, since they are going for lockdown, how are we going to sustain the private teachers? You know, the private schools is one of the vital schools in Uganda. Even I'm not saying it, but actually it's the best. Even for you, you are there, you are born through private school. Look at how government school has been running. The teachers, they go at their own will. So, which means the private school is very important. Now, pertaining how the government tried to put some strategies for during the lockdown, you should look at how the teachers on private has been deliberately ignored. They have come out with over the relief fund, the relief funds. Look at how they handled it. A lot of funds has been injected in relief fund, but even some of our teachers here, are they able to get that money? No, absolutely no. People of self-interest or self-dependence, they just lose that money and go away. Now, and you need to take note. I heard Mr. Richard talking about that we, as a nation, we have to consider something, that the lockdown is very, 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 very malicious, on the people of the nation. Yes, right. But is it possible to people to die uneducated or to die with knowledge? I heard him talking about that. But before lockdown, we as students in Uganda, we were able, at least we are going far. But this lockdown has tortured human beings, people, especially students, even parents. Now, you remember to take note, teacher as a rose. 270 days as a student you spend at school. And then 90 days you spend at home. Now you look at this, how this lockdown has taken our children, brothers and sisters. We are staying almost 2 years plus without anything. And remember, education is the most powerful weapon. When you teach any child, you are teaching the world or you are teaching the nation. But are we meaning this thing? Of course, we know the crises are now touching all the world. But is there something to do together to sustain the children or with knowledge? It's not there. Now, the issues of health, the issues of psychosocial support to teachers. Of course, the government has deliberately refused. Actually, they are not thinking about this thing. And they realize this thing, they were able to realize this thing when they are almost planning to what? To open the school around June. Then they have to give the teachers something. But even some of this, then they did not get it. They did not get it. Psychosocial support. They are meaning it. Many allied people talking on NTVs, we are going to increase our salaries. But up to now, where are they? What's but no actions? Maybe people need to take note that girls' child education, a lot of funds is also injected. But what kind of education are they giving to our girls or our sisters? A lot of funds, they borrow funds from outside. You look at how boys' child education has been deliberately ignored. The girl who is educated is a man who is a drunkard, boys who is a drunkard, look after those girls, pregnant. What is the repercussion? we are talking about teenage pregnancy. But we are not encouraging boys' child education. We are not even that girls' child education. A lot of funds have been injected. UNICEF giving money. What? Those donors from the country, they are giving money. But the governments lose this money for selfish interest. Again, we are yearning here how we are encouraging girls' child education. Now, one of my brothers talking about 30% of children are not going back to school. Yes, you are right. Why? Because during this lockdown, there was no sensitization, and no one can further even teach the children at home. Even if during this fire gathering, any workshop, we can attend. You can attend such that you sustain those students. Remain well with knowledge. Question to Mr. Richard to improve since the lockdown has started. You talk about fairness and connectivity and investment. Now, let me ask you, the issues of health. Was straight outside. Now, how can we invest in health facilities and you see how this is security? They are touching.
Francis, I think it's your network. We can't hear you really.
Are we yearning for? We are still putting a lot of funds.
Okay. I think we were not able to get his question, and I think Richard was also not able to get his question due to network. Let me move back to our panelists as we move towards the end of this talk show. Before I get closing remarks from Richard, I'll give Richard time to respond. But also, I have a question to Richard. President Yoweri Museveni set a target and said by the end of December 2021, which is just a few days from now, 12 million people should have been vaccinated. Do you think we are going to hit that target?
The president has set a target deliberately, looking at factors that put us at risk of the spread of the COVID-19 virus. My brother Fred put a very pertinent question. That everything we have been looking at, we are looking at finances, we are looking at this and that. And first of all, I want to distance myself. I don't speak for local government as such, and I wouldn't wish to address this platform in the capacity of someone who generally speaks for local government. Otherwise, I would be restricting myself particularly to the context of Omoro. Moderator, what I have here is information and my thoughts on the information that are available and can be accessed by everybody. How prepared is government? Let's move away from talking finances. How prepared? Particularly in the schools, there are other key interventions that are being put. one of the very critical interventions is to strengthen the school-based surveillance systems. And this looks specifically at screening, assessment, and ensuring that the school population is safe enough. So we believe, personally as an individual, I believe the only problem is that it does not happen only in Uganda, but citizens everywhere are stubborn, such that when government comes and clarifies this is the position that can help us, the citizens do not want to question it in their thoughts, but they question the decision through their actions. And sometimes the actions lead to negative impacts. And I believe if the school surveillance systems are put in place, and then as citizens, we do not go ahead to question the system by testing it with our own conduct and actions, I believe our children are going to be safe in the schools. The president put a target because he as an individual, I know is looking at who carries the risk. There are risk carriers. And that also leads me to a response to one of the earlier speakers who noted that there are some children who are even not supposed to be vaccinated, but they were kept at home. Now, the question that you ask yourself is, these children don't fall from the vacuum. These children come from the communities. And how do you guarantee that they are coming from safe communities? These people interact, these children interact with people who come from communities elsewhere. So it's not just a matter of picking the children and putting them safely somewhere on their own. There are other people who become risk carriers who interact with these children. So the president's focus, to me as an individual, was looking at opening the economy at a time when the risk of infection, or even if there is going to be infections, then the impact and the effect of the infections cannot again overweigh on the nation, cannot overweigh on the economy. I made an illustration of countries. We are not better than the United States. We are not better than the United Kingdom. We are not better than Canada. But these are countries that almost 100% of their population is vaccinated. Not the first jab that some of us took and we ran away. No, these people took the first jab, the second jab. United Kingdom is now going for their third. Canada is going for their third. We are not better than these countries. So the primary emphasis on vaccination is because as long as we believe in science, then we should believe that science has tested and science has proved that for now, the only safe means is get vaccinated and reduce the impact. Shall we have 12 million people vaccinated? My answer is very simple. The answer is possibly no. Why? Because we have been seeing campaigns going around of asking people not to vaccinate. At the moment, we have about 9.7 million people who are vaccinated, about 9.7 million people who are vaccinated. But now these statistics include people who have taken their full doses of the vaccines and then people who took only one jab. So that means in the 9 million people, still they are halfway, people are even not vaccinated. And when you now come to the fully vaccinated, the statistics can be very small. I come in a rural community, I interact with towns and cities, and I know what goes on in the communities. Majority of people took one jab of vaccines that they are supposed to take 2 jabs for it to be a full vaccination. So this is pertinent to the full opening of the economy. We have seen it demonstrated elsewhere. But also I want to say it is not a guarantee, because even in the nations that are fully vaccinated, we still see resurgence of incidences of COVID-19. Why? Because of the earlier explanation that science has given us that the virus mutates. So in the mutation, we may be safe against this, and then the next mutation comes, and we realize there are still infections. But also scientists are telling us that even if in the other stage of mutation, if you were already fully vaccinated, the impact is less. And that is why the president keeps saying, go and vaccinate. So that even if we go into another stage of the mutation, the impact will be less, even if the economy is fully open. I only pray, Madam Moderator, that we come to terms with science. For a lot of people who do not believe these scientists, we come to terms with science and we embrace the vaccines for now as a primary strategy for the full reopening of the economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. We have come to the end of our discussion for today. And we really appreciate all the panelists and attendees for sparing their time to be with us. Would like to now get the closing remarks from our panelists, and I will start right from you, Richard, to kindly give us your closing remark.
It is rather a very brief one. I want to thank you, Madam Moderator, for steering this discussion so ably. I also extend my sincere thanks to Center for Constitutional Governance for always giving the citizens a platform for receiving balanced information. I call it balanced information because most of the discussions that are steered by Center for Constitutional Governance looks at all perspectives of walks of life. So CCG, we very much appreciate. To our dear audience, even to the audience that shall be extended when this probably audios or the videos get relayed and played, my only message to all of us is, let us believe what the scientists are telling us as a safe strategy to exit from the impact of COVID-19 as per now. And we believe government decisions are premised on such advice and pieces of information that are available. So let us also embrace the government programs and the strategies that are targeted to mitigating the impact of COVID-19. It may not remove, it may not eradicate, but we strongly believe it can mitigate the drastic impact, and it reduces it to a small and manageable capacity. I thank you so much. Let us keep praying for the nation and also for the school-going children and to our teachers, that as we reopen the schools, they will be able to stay safe enough for the education system not to be interrupted again. I thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Richard. I would like to invite Diana to give us her closing remark.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator and CCG at large. This discussion has been a very healthy and good one, and indeed it has imparted a lot of knowledge and raised in hope for us, the students who have been a victim of this situation. So as a member in a club, as a member of Hope Initiative Club, I'm going to spread the good news, because this discussion has been very healthy, and it should not end with only the panelists and the attendees here only, but we should endeavor to spread it out, the good news and the hope raised in this discussion. I'm very glad, I'm very happy about this discussion. Thank you very much, the contribution from the attendees and others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Last but not least, let me get closing remark from Emmanuel Ochan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Moderator and Center for Constitutional Governance. Sorry, my network has been a little unstable, but I'm I want to encourage each and every stakeholder in the educational process that type well, but it's high time we put all our mantra together and we have a duty to mold so that they're the next leaders of our generation. Governments should play their parts. Community leaders, opinion leaders should play their part in putting every resources possible so that we are able to reopen up as stipulated on the 10th of January. I know that some of the teachers have already lost hope, but I want to breathe words of encouragement into you that tough times do not last, and therefore we need to once again re-energize ourselves. We need to put together our thoughts away from every kind of situations that we've been facing, but we need to come together once again. We need to unite for the goodwill of the children, because if we do not do that, then the future of this nation is actually doomed. I want to encourage children that they should not lose hope. They also have a duty to make sure that since every resource is being put for their own good, they should also make sure that their participation is to the maximum. Things are not going to be the same again. We're in the new normal. Therefore, everybody should make sure that they dress in the new court, ready to adopt to the new normal. I want to particularly thank our moderator and my colleague panelists for all your exhaustive discussions that have taken place on this platform. We strongly believe that these views that we've shared here will make a contribution to making our educational institutions and our education sector a better one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We have come to the end of the community talk show for today. I would like to appreciate Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing this community talk show. Community talk show is aired on Civic Space TV every Monday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We discuss very, very pertinent issues that affect the community, especially at that particular time. And for today, we have been looking at the issue of reopening of schools. This is something that is an issue for discussion right now. It has affected nearly everybody in this country. Personally, I'm a student and also a lecturer. So everybody in one way or the other has been affected, either as a student, a teacher, a lecturer, a parent, or a stakeholder. And I'd like to appreciate so much CCG for bringing the discussion to the community. I would like to thank the panelists who joined us today. We had 3 people on the panel. We had Right Honourable Richard Luganya Bongowat, who is the district speaker of Omoro district. We also had Ochan Emmanuel, who is a senior education officer at St. John Bosco Minor Seminary, Hoima. Last but not least, we had Miss Layibi Diana Campus, who is a student pursuing Bachelor of Laws at Gulu University and also the General Secretary of Hope Initiative Club, which is a club that has been started in universities by Center for Constitutional Governance. I appreciate as well the attendees who were able to attend and contribute to this discussion. I would like to appreciate the viewers of Civic Space TV who have been watching this program. I've been your moderator for today. My name is Layibi Diana. I'm an advocate, a tax consultant, and a lecturer. Thank you so much. Our discussion ends here. I'll see you next week, same time. Thank you.